Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. We've got another cocktail video for you today, and today we're going to be talking about the boulevardier. So, the boulevardier. The boulevardier is a cocktail that was invented in Paris, France at Harry's New York bar in the 1920s. It first appeared in the Barflies and Cocktails cocktail book in 1927. Oftentimes, the boulevardier is described as being either a takeoff or a variation on the Negroni, which I think can be a little bit misleading. The Negroni's history goes back a little bit farther. They think the Negroni was created in Florence, Italy in about 1919, which make it, 3, 4, 5 years older than the boulevardier. However, they were both created in totally different cities by different types of people. The Negroni was created by Italians in Italy, and the boulevardier was created by American expats in Paris, France. So I think the most likely scenario is that these two cocktails were just invented entirely separate from one another in about the same time period. Now that we know a little bit about the cocktail, let's go ahead and make one. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. The recipe that I'm going to use for our boulevardier today is going to be filled with greens from a Drinkable feast. I sort of got interested in this book the other day. He talks about a lot of the different cocktails that people were drinking in Paris in the 1920s. It's sort of one half cocktail book, one half history book. His recipe calls for equal parts. There are a lot of people that like to put a little bit more bourbon than their other ingredients because they feel it's a little bit too bitter. I'm going to make this as a 1-to-1 cocktail because I feel like that's the most loyal to what the cocktail originally was. So, we're going to start off with our Campari. Now, some recipes will call for 3/4 of an ounce. I'm just going to do an ounce. In my experience, no one has ever complained that their drink was too big. Now, the bourbon I'm going with is an Old Forester 1910. This is a double oaked bourbon. I think a lot of times on cocktails, I'm a big fan of using rye bourbons or even ryes. But I think in this cocktail with the bitter, a nice sweet bourbon is going to go really well in there. Another good one here would be a Woodford double oaked. Another thing you'll hear some people say, especially in the bourbon community, is that you can't use nice bourbons in cocktails. Those people are to be ignored. If you buy your bourbon, you can put it in whatever you want. I love a boulevardier, and I think a nice aged sweet bourbon goes really, really well in there. So I'm going to use my Old Forester 1910. So our sweet vermouth is going to be Carpano Antica. It's just one of the nicer vermouths. I'm not a big vermouth. I don't know a lot about it yet, but I am looking to learn more, and everybody says this is the best one to use in this cocktail. And I have typically used other vermouths. This is the first time I'll be using this one, so we'll see if people are right. Now, as far as garnishing this, you can kind of go a couple of different ways. Some people use orange, some people use cherry. I think cherry is the way to go. Some people could always use both. And I am not sponsored by them, but the Luxardo Maraschino cherries are fantastic. The other thing that's nice about a cocktail like this that's got a lot of bitterness to it is when you get your cherry, you can go ahead and grab a pretty fair amount, maybe half a bar spoon of the cherry juice that's in there, and drop that in there. Again, remember this is still going to be a fairly bitter cocktail, so a little bit of the sweetness from that cherry juice is going to do no harm whatsoever. Now I already had this glass pre-chilled, and we got a big ice cube in there. Now one of the things, some people do this in a mixing glass. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfectly fine way to make it. I think with a pre-chilled glass, mixing it in the glass is just fine. The reason you hold the glass like this, you're just feeling for when the glass gets nice and cold. Now with the pre-chilled glass, obviously it's a little bit different, but you just want to make sure your liquid is cooled down. What some people do, well, you'll see bartenders in a lot of nice bars do, so you can just stick a little straw in there. I think that's about right. So, there you have your boulevardier. Let's give it a try. See, this way I think this as equal parts work so well because you taste everything. The first thing you get is the bitterness from the Campari, but it's tempered by the bourbon and that sweetness. You get the vermouth sort of throughout, and then on the finish it's all bourbon with a little bit of Campari at the edges. It's an incredibly well-balanced cocktail, and in recent weeks this has become one of my favorite cocktails. It's incredibly well-balanced. Again, if it does come off too bitter, feel free to go with 1 ounce, 1 ounce, and 1.5 ounces, or whatever you're comfortable with. It's your bar. So that's your boulevardier. I want to thank you for coming, and I want you to like and subscribe. And I'm going to add in a link to the book in the comments below. And I want everybody to have a nice drink and have a nice day.